Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show to talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of the Blacklist. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, what I thought was so fascinating is that Cynthia Pennebaker is the one who brought this case to them. In fact, she didn't even go to the FBI first and foremost. She went to Reddington, and that ended up leading to this whole thing. But it turns out that opening we got, that woman that just popped up, that was who scared that couple who was outside camping. Turns out that woman was her daughter-in-law. And I thought, like, oh my god, like maybe her daughter-in-law was one of those people that was camping and maybe she got kidnapped in that regard. It's like, no, the woman who burst into their camp was her daughter-in-law, Sheila, and she's been missing for like 3 weeks. And obviously Pennebaker wants Reddington's help because it's like, I don't even just want the task force help. I want your help to find whoever did this to her and make them pay. She's looking for revenge because she knows Reddington out of anyone will understand. It's like, right, when you're in this dark place, when you've been in the light, and then like all the only place you can get the answers, get what you want, get the payback you need is in those dark realms. And it's like, she's like, yes, I knew out of anyone you would understand. And I think it's such an interesting twist in development that, especially because when you get like Eva's situation, you're like, okay, what's this all about? Why are you kidnapping people? You found like the next target, and it's like, wow, you're targeting a little girl. So I'm like, at first you're like, okay, the motives don't match up. Well, your victims don't match up because it's like, okay, you're replacing a full-grown woman with a little girl. Like, what's up with that? It took me a little way into the episode, but it wasn't too long before I figured out that this was a Munchausen situation. What made me what sparked it first in my episode? I mean, my mind was in the episode, in the earlier parts in the episode when Mary went to the hospital with her daughter. Because I thought at first, like, her little girl was having a seizure. So I was like, oh, did she induce that? Because Eva just happens to be outside. Like, so you're trying to put her in a position. She's at the hospital so you can kidnap her. But then, like, when Mary was at the hospital, the way she was talking to the doctor, I was like, I don't know. Like, she was talking spicy to the doctor. Like, she knew more than the doctor. I was like, okay. Like, I'm sure, like, you get heated and stuff like that. But for her to, like, talk like she knows more than a medical professional, she's like, I take care of my daughter every time. Like, I know what's going on here. And at first I was like, that's weird. And then I started getting that feeling, like, the way she's acting, I was like, is this and it turns out to be, yes, a Munchausen thing. Like, everything afterward just solidified it more, because in that moment, it's like, oh, like, I'm a good mother that does whatever she can for her daughter. And Eva, like, tranked her and was like, oh, yeah, like, she'll get better without you or something like that. And I was like, oh, my God, you're an avenging angel for children who are the victims of Munchausen by proxy because their parents are making them sick. I was like, wow. I was like, that's crazy, because that means, like, Pennebaker started all this because she wanted to get justice for her daughter-in-law, and just to find out, like, wait a minute, your daughter-in-law is not a good person. I was like, that's wild. Because there's a lot of victims involved in this. Like, because it's, once again, it just started, like, making more and more sense. It started solidifying that more and more as the episode went on, when it's like, oh, like, we're giving you the same sicknesses that your children got, because it's like, right, you want them to feel the pain that these mothers inflicted on their child. I was like, oh my God. Because I've watched enough crime dramas where Munchausen stuff has popped up, like, obviously, like, SVU, I'm sure, has had one or a few episodes. Obviously, the thing that comes to my mind first is there's a show on Hulu I haven't watched called The Act. It's based on a real story. I don't remember the names in the story, but I remember the story probably when it initially came out. Basically, it's the best. It's a very public, and probably in the more recent years, a well-documented example of a Munchausen by proxy situation. About the girl who found out her mom was, like, making her sick her entire life, and then I think it was her and her boyfriend killed her mom, and that was a whole court thing. Once again, that's what the show The Act is based around. So that's probably, like, I'm sure there's other examples, but that's, like, definitely, like, the, not just pop zeitgeist, just the general news zeitgeist, because that's such a very, like, well-documented trial and story that it's kind of in the general, it's the most recent general zeitgeist of, like, that I'm aware of. So that's why it immediately hit me that this was like a Munchausen by proxy situation going on here. obviously they ended up capturing one of the nurses that worked for Eva, because Eva initially, like the nurse that was working with her, didn't want to keep doing it. It's like, right, we already got a patient who ended up escaping. We don't need to do this. But then she was like, Chelsea is her, and she's like, every time you want me to do what you want to, you say it's for, you bring up Chelsea. She's like, you're right, I am, because she's the reason for this. Now at first I was like, it's Chelsea, because I was about to say like, is Chelsea like, at first I was like, is it that nurse's daughter or something? But like, no, the way she talks about it, it has to be someone connected to Eva that nurse knows about. And it turns out that's the case. It turns out Chelsea is Eva's sister, who died as a byproduct of their mother having Munchausen by proxy. And the nurse that's working with her was the nurse that was a home nurse at the time, taking care of Chelsea. So they're both bound together by this trauma, and they're trying to help save someone so no one ever has to go through what Chelsea did again. And it's like, that's a complicated thing on multiple fronts. For the task force, it's like, wait, because even Parker's like, wait, who am I supposed to handcuff? Like, Eva's the criminal here, but this mother is making her own child sick, potentially giving her irreparable damage. So it's like, you know, and Wrestler's like, right, we just put the cuffs on people and we figured out the aftermath after the fact. And obviously Panda Baker, she needed answers, and that nurse wasn't talking. I'm actually super surprised Harold and the others I guess she's a senator, which just kind of shows you she has the power and position. That's also the sad thing too. So many people go missing, and the only reason why Sheila's situation is getting so much attention is because she has a mother-in-law who is a senator. So just showing like, right, you have the power and position to do that. Not everyone else has a family member with that type of connection to, you know, make something happen, you know? It even makes you feel all kinds of complicated, because you're like, like it's that vigilanteism that you're just kind of like, man, Eva's a bad person, but she's helping kids. She's actually helping the victims in this case, and knowing her circumstances, you kind of feel for her, like, right, she's trying to get justice for the sister she lost to the exact same thing. She told people back then that her mom was making her sister sick and no one would listen to her, and everything that the doctors were doing back then just made her sister worse. Because that's the sad thing. It's a mental disorder. Like, from a psychological standpoint, I am so curious where that comes from. I mean, from a psychological standpoint, I can understand how you get there, but I'm curious, like, how that byproduct comes about, because it is this need to feel, you want to make someone sick because you want to be their everything. You want to feel special. You want to be a hero because, like, oh my God, I'm making this person better. You want to feel needed and important to something in this world. It's like, right, it's not just enough being a parent. It's like, yeah, but my child needs me every waking moment. It makes you feel good. I mean, and I'm just assuming. But it's just like, from a, like I said, psychological standpoint, it's like, how does that, what wires and synapses have to go wrong in your head for, I mean, I guess that's with any, like, mental illness, but it's like, it's just crazy to think, you know, I guess it's like, I've been aware of Munchausen by proxy. Once again, I've watched enough crime dramas where that's come up, so it's in my, like, wheelhouse of just knowledge I've learned from TV shows. But it's such an interesting thing that I'm like, what goes on in the brain to make that happen? It's like, I can not understand, but like certain sides of your brain kind of, I would assume, get shut down to make you think it's okay to do this, because you'll justify it by being like, yeah, I'm making my child sick, but it's just like, because I love my child. Like, you, like, what, like, gymnastics does your mind do to justify what you're doing to your child? It's so fucked up. But, like, once again, from a psychological standpoint, it's like understanding the human brain, that it's capable of that something could happen to your brain. It's crazy. And I mean, even for Panda Baker, it's so hard to believe. Like, she's like, what? No, there's no way my daughter-in-law loves she's dedicated so much to my granddaughter. There's no way she could do it, you know? Because the moment Teddy came out, I was like, yeah, she's not going to like this answer. But once again, it's like, Panda Baker being able to make that happen, and she wasn't too happy about hearing the torture going on. But Reddington is like, right, here, you know, because she was like, right, you are here instead of looking into the stuff of Liz. He's like, yeah, I want to reflect a little bit, because when he does find the person who is responsible for Liz's death, the question for him is like, I think sitting down with someone who is basically the mirror image to him to some extent, like, right, your family situation, someone so important to you was hurt, you're out for blood, you're out for revenge. I know that we understand each other, and being here in front of you makes me a little reflect that the fact is, he's like, if someone like you, who even Pennebaker says that she's always been someone that's always known where the line was and never crossed it, and now she's doing it. But for Reddington, it's, if someone like you is willing to go this far, how far is someone like me willing to go? And that's always been the conversation. That's been the Mirsay conversation to all of this of how far is Reddington willing to go? How much will be enough? Like, even will it fill the hole in his heart? Most likely not. It won't bring Liz back. But it is that mystery of understanding who's responsible for Liz's death. You need to make every party pay for her, you know? Especially in this episode 2 when Reddington was helping, was it Herbie, his medical expert dude, helping him out with the baby. And you know that meant the world to him, because the last time he had that was with Agnes when she was younger. And obviously having Agnes in his arm just probably made him think of Liz when she was a baby. But then you add in the fact is that it's like, right, it's probably that moment is just like, he been saying like, right, cherish these moments, because it's probably just holding that baby in his arms probably just made him think about Liz all over again. You're just like, it's beautiful, it's symbolic, but it's also heartbreaking at the same time, knowing what Reddington's lost, you know, losing Liz. And so it's just crazy. I mean, and it's not just Pennebaker that's having to deal with this realization. Even the guy whose wife is Mary, he's like, no, there's no way. My wife is so dedicated. There's no way she could be that. He's like, okay, please bring my granddaughter back and my daughter back and my wife. Like, he's like, I'm sure there's some explanation for it, because no one wants to believe that the person. It's like, no, the mother of my child. There's no way she could do anything so horrendous as purposely make our child sick. There's no way she'd do that. She's a caring person. That's a hard reality to come to terms with. Even Pennebaker was just like, no. But you had Reddington, because she was like, oh, Sheila's awake. What should I do? And Reddington's like, you had the person with all the answers there. Go get all the facts you need and decide. And it's like, you know, it probably upset her so much when she's in the hospital. It's like, you know, her son's like, oh, it's a good miracle. I'm so glad. And she's like, yeah, I'm just so overwhelmed. And she's looking at her granddaughter laying in the bed with Sheila holding tight to her. It's like, dude, like, how do you control yourself? Have the composure to handle that? So Sheila ends up getting arrested at the end of the episode. And it is actually really adorable and beautiful seeing Cynthia with her granddaughter like that. It's like, yeah, Mom doesn't let me have this because it makes me sick. She's like, well, I promise you, sweetie, Grandma knows best. This is not going to make you sick. It's like, see, it's so good. It's like, it was such a heartwarming moment. Because we never get to see Cynthia like that. Because which I always say this, I think I've mentioned this before. Just a little, it's a little personal, but not really personal. It's just a name. But it's like, it's just funny anytime I have to say Cynthia, because my mom's name is Cynthia. So it's just funny. Just, I don't know. Once again, it's like that weird thing I have when a character's named Michael. I'm so, like, it's maybe narcissism on my part, but it just makes me feel weird because it almost makes me feel like I'm talking in third person. That's why I'm like, I don't know. Anytime I have to talk about a character named Michael, I don't always react, but it's always in the back of my mind like, oh, it just feels weird. Tangents aside. But at the end of the day, it worked out that Pennebaker, and I love what Reddington said, and I think it was so poignant because when he's saying it to Cynthia, he's also saying it to himself, that it's like, at the end of the day, it wasn't me that did it. It wasn't the task force. It wasn't even your husband. It was you. You're the reason why this truth came out. You're the reason why this all played out. So, like, give yourself credit because you not only the one that reached out for help, but you're also the one that took that information. You took that truth. You found the truth on your own and did all this. So that is on you, what you've done, you know? And I thought that was kind of a beautiful thing. And I think because when Reddington looks at her, Reddington thinks of like his own journey for the truth, his own journey through the darkness to find answers to everything related to Liz. And I thought that was so powerful. So, Eva gets arrested, but so does Mary, because Eva comes into the room and she's like, hey, like, I'm going to save you and get you away from your mother. And then it's like, the little girl picked up the gun and Eva's like, right, she's making, it's like, wait, my mom's making me sick? It's like, dude, that poor little girl is going to be so psychologically scarred. It's like, wait a minute, I just shot this lady. Well, the lady who just told me, that lady who was trying to hurt my mom, but it turns out she was trying to hurt my mom because my mom was hurting me. It's like, wait, what? especially because she, because you're, what is a parent supposed to do? A parent's supposed to protect you. That is the most beautiful and natural, like, aspect of all, well, I can't say all life, because there are, like, don't spiders eat their young? I mean, there's also, like, the food chain aspect, well, just the animalistic thing of, like, right, some animals will kill their children if you're too weak to survive on your own. It's almost like a mercy in a twisted way. But generally speaking, at the very least, let's keep it human realized, element-wise. But it's also, I think it exists in animalistic, humans are animals, but, in the animal kingdom as well, of, like, parents protecting their child, or at least putting them in a position to prosper. It's kind of a thing. And to have that pure relationship of a child needing their parent, to have that relationship tainted by, once again, something that's not 100% on them, psychological. Maybe it's something that happened in their lives that triggered that, or just filling some void inside of them triggered it. Once again, I don't know what that exact spark is. What synapses had to go wrong, what wiring in your brain has to be altered, what chemicals have to be off in your brain for you to get to that Munchausen by proxy point. Because you also know, like, from the beginning, like, Park took this very personal. It's like, right, we're going to find out the person who did this to these women, and then to find out, wait, we're trying to get justice for women who are terrible human beings. Once again, it's always like the asterisk beside, because it's like, right, it's a medical condition. It's a mental illness that they have. So you have a little bit of sympathy. Yes, it's a terrible thing they do, but they also can't help themselves, sadly. So it's complicated, I think. You still want to throw the book at them, but you're also like, yeah, they can't help themselves. It's like something's wrong in their brain. I think the way you talk about it too, like, it is a recognized psychological or, like, mental illness. It is recognized in that regard, but regardless, it's also sad to know it's like that many. I mean, it's just like, how many people does she have? I mean, she's gone through this enough times that there's dead bodies from, like, the mothers that she's dealt with in the past, and it's like, there's that many people over the years who've had it too. And the messed up thing that they're using this that's how Eva was able to find him, is through this foundation, because it just makes it even worse of, like, all the money that gets raised for there's so many layers to it. That's just all kinds of jacked up. Nevertheless, let's kind of get away from what is essentially a very depressing subject. I mean, you can't help but avoid, it's just a part of the nature of things. I did think it was interesting, like, stuff sprinkled throughout the episode, Aram being like, oh yeah, I have something to work on. It's like, wait, more important than this? At first I was like, doesn't sound like it's anything related to Reddington's. I'm like, what the hell is Aram up to? I was like, that's weird. And then they're talking about a sponsor at some point. He's like, wait, you guys talking about my sponsor? It's like, no, we're talking about LeBron, some shoes that he had or whatever. And the rest was like, oh yeah, really? What? I'm not sure what game you guys are talking about. I guess they messed up because he's probably the sports dude, so he would know, like, nah, LeBron wasn't playing any game recently for y'all to be bringing that up, like a recent conversation or whatever. And then at first he thinks it's an intervention later on, but it's like, no, everyone's celebrating the 2-month sobriety day has, and every day is a beautiful thing. It is because once again, addiction is a fight for the rest of your life, and every day is an important step. Every day it should never be taken granted, like that. Every day counts, so I thought that was kind of beautiful. Everyone rallied together, got him a cake. They were trying to get in contact with his sponsor in case his sponsor wanted to be there for the celebration. So I thought that was beautiful, because he's like, right, he's like, I know I'm not the emotional type, but you know what this means? It's like, we know what it means to you, because it means that much to us as well too. So I thought that was beautiful, just this family together. Then we had some interesting developments where Reddington and Weecha end up tracking down the guy who's responsible for the device. We find, well, at least guy who's part way, he has another step in the road to finding the guy who's connected to all this. Because they kept bringing up some interesting stuff that basically the pill was, not the pill, well, it's designed to be an appeal, but first and foremost, it can be a tracker, but for medical purposes, it's meant to be able to, like, contact, like, information between a doctor and the patient, so that the doctor is more well versed up on what the patient's going through. It's very interesting technology. But it turns out the one responsible for it, which has a tragic story on its own, is Andrew Kinnison. And was it Andrew Kinnison or Anderson Kinnison? I think it's Andrew Kinnison. I was like, why does that name sound so familiar? It took me a while. I was like, it seems so familiar. I can't place it. It wasn't until the very end of the episode. Because there's no preview for the next episode. I didn't watch anything. But then I was like, oh my God. I was like, I'm so stupid. That's the guy that Cooper made, quote unquote, disappear, new ID and all that for his blackmailer. I was like, because in my mind, I kept thinking like, okay, these stories are disconnected. They're not. They're heavily tied, which means unwillingly and unknowingly, Cooper has been he's being blackmailed and inadvertently helping the person who's connected to Liz's death. Because this Andrew guy doesn't seem like he's just the main dude behind the technology. So either whoever funded him wanted him to disappear, which is interesting because whoever this is responsible for killing Liz. In no shape or form did they kill Kinnison. You would think it'd be easier to kill him because he's a loose end. That's why you wanted him to disappear, because you already knew Reddington was looking into this, and it was only a matter of time until Reddington sniff this out. Because it's been 2 years. Like, you could have dealt with all this in 2 years, but you thought no one was looking into it until Reddington came back looking, and now that's why this has all been set in motion, because Reddington's return, because he started turning over every rock asking questions about what happened 2 years ago. I was like, that's fascinating. So either the person who's doing all this is related to Kinnison, and either they're related to him, and that's why they didn't kill him, or they see. Because I'm like, what? I guess he's a means to an end that you don't want to kill him because he's the only one that has access to know how to make this technology. You'll probably get rid of him the moment he's no longer useful, the moment you're able to replicate it yourself. But I don't think Kinnison's the one behind this. I think what happened is he got funded by someone to allow him to make this technology. He didn't know it was going to be used in a way to be responsible for someone's murder. He just, wasn't it like his wife or something, like the medicine she was taking wasn't like it was, I forgot what the question was. She got confused when it came to her medication, and she ended up not taking what she needed to and ended up hurting a lot of people. It was a very tragic situation, so... this guardian angel came by and was probably like, hey, I'll give you all the time and resources, because the guy that Reddington ends up going to talk to, the medical expert dude, it turns out he wanted to go all in on the research of what the guy was doing, but your truck, like the not FCA. No, it wasn't FCA because that's food, right? No, that's the FDA, right? Whatever the case may be, the department that kind of co-signs whether or not like medicines or like stuff in the medical field is okay to go through like the rigorous trials and testing and stuff like that, kind of wouldn't let it go through. I forgot what the reasoning was. So he had to find other people, and so whoever it is reached out to him to set this all up. But holy crap, to know all these stories are connected. I am very, very excited to ultimately see where all of this ends up taking us. Because the next episode is the Blacklister is Andrew Kinnison. So, but really, that's all I want to talk about. To the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.